Hello, everyone. I'm Ava, and today I'll be summarizing a drama, comedy, and romantic film called The Hollers. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The film begins in a small American town where a son interrupts his mother as she gets ready to leave. She shoos him away, telling him to use the other bathroom, where his father is. Desperate, the boy waits outside the door, but he can't hold it any longer and finds the only remaining solution.
What the hell are you doing? God!
As he relieves himself, his father interrupts him, telling him that his mother pours orange juice in there. Leaving his son to finish his business, the father heads to the bathroom, only to find his wife on the floor. After realizing she's not joking, they decide to call an ambulance. Meanwhile, their younger son, John, lives in New York, working a serious job, though at the moment, he's sketching something. His girlfriend, Rebecca, calls him. She's pregnant, and John has missed her appointment. Bika arrives at his office and informs him that his father called to say his mother is in the hospital. She had a seizure this morning, and they suspect a brain tumor. John can't believe it. Bika has already booked him a flight, so he's leaving immediately. He feels drained and worried about his mother. As he rides a taxi to the hospital, a beautiful song plays in the background, and nostalgia hits John. Memories of the town where he grew up flood his mind. Before continuing with the driver, he steps out to smoke a cigarette. The scene shifts to the hospital, where the rest of the family is gathered. They're casually commenting on a TV show when John arrives. After a heartfelt hug, his mother immediately criticizes him for smelling like cigarettes. The male nurse taking care of John's mother is Jason Owens. He married Gwen, John's high school sweetheart, to whom he was once engaged. However, Gwen now has a child with another man. Their father is mostly unaware of these details since he was always busy with work. Meanwhile, Don, the father, gets into an argument with his son, Ron, just as Dr. Fong enters the room, watching them with confusion. Dr. Fong informs their mother, Sally, that she has a rather large tumor near her frontal lobe. He explains that they can give her steroids to help reduce the tumor size.
What will the steroids do to her muscles?
The doctor also informs them that this is not a new tumor. It has likely been growing for the past 10 to 15 years. He expresses surprise that there haven't been more noticeable symptoms. However, from Sally's stories, it becomes clear that there were plenty of signs all along.
Toes and fingers. Would loss of sight in one eye be a symptom? Temporary paralysis?
Their father, Don, had assumed it was nothing serious, so they never went to the doctor. On the way home, we learned that Don fired Ron, something John didn't even know was possible, as he wasn't aware Ron worked for their father in the first place. John doesn't keep in touch often. It turns out Don is only 3 weeks away from total bankruptcy. When Ron pointed this out to him, Don responded by firing him. At one point, they pull over to the side of the road, and Ron grabs a pair of binoculars. From their conversation, we learn that John isn't married to Rebecca, even though they're expecting a child together. They've stopped in front of Stacy's house, Ron's ex-wife, with whom he has 2 daughters. Stacy has started seeing someone new, so Ron is checking things out. The man she's dating notices them and walks up to their car. It turns out to be Father Dan, a priest. Father Dan tells Ron that Stacy would appreciate it if he stopped spying on her. Embarrassed, Ron tries to leave. After Father Dan fixes their car, they finally make it home peacefully. John settles into his old bedroom, where drawings of a familiar face, Gwen, can still be seen. He lies on the bed and soon falls asleep. The next morning, he heads to the hospital, where his parents are still asleep. It's 8 a.m., and Don is running late for work, so he leaves, while John stays behind with his mother. Once Don is gone, John tells his mother she can stop pretending to be asleep. Sally opens her eyes and says, "You cried all night." As the story continues, we learn that Sally is aware of the impending bankruptcy because she's the one who handles the accounting. John brings her breakfast, snacks, and ice cream. Sally appreciates it, saying, "Well done. I'd love to have a son like you in the future." They talk about Bob Marley, who also had a tumor, and discuss the diagnosis a bit more until Jason enters the room.
Ice cream for breakfast?
John learns from Jason that his mother is on the brink of developing diabetes, so maybe ice cream isn't the best breakfast choice after all. Jason calls him into the hallway to talk after John asks if there's some issue between them. In the hallway, Jason reveals that Gwen has been asking about John nonstop ever since he returned to town. John reassures him, saying he has no romantic intentions with Gwen, as he already has a girlfriend and is expecting a child. Jason begins criticizing him after learning that he's having a child but isn't married. After some more pointless arguing, Jason invites him to dinner, mentioning that Gwen insisted, so he's extending the invitation. Meanwhile, Dawn arrives at work and finds out that no one, except for one lady, has shown up. This is because the workers haven't been paid for 2 weeks. He gives his assistant a credit card and tells her to pay everyone for last week so they'll finally show up for work. During his conversation with his mother, we learn that John doesn't really like his current job and that he's working on a graphic novel, something we saw at the beginning of the film. A lot of us get stuck in situations where we end up doing work we don't like because we feel we're not good enough at the work we love. His mother encourages him to publish his graphic novel, but John feels like he's not good enough. Sally shares stories of when she and Dawn lived in Detroit after they got married. She talks about how Dawn worked in a small office at the time. She recalls that he would finish his work at 5 p.m. and she would leave their apartment at 3 p.m., walking to meet him. At that time, Dawn's career wasn't going well and there were no performances, but she supported him through it all. She reflects on how many times she's thought she could have done things differently. At one point, she nearly regrets marrying Dawn.
What?
Soon, Ron arrives with his daughters. John leaves the hospital shortly after and drives off in his car. He calls Rebecca, telling her that things aren't going well. He opens up about all the problems he's going through. The doctor wants his mother to have a craniotomy by the end of the week. His father is about to go bankrupt. His mother regrets marrying his father. The nurse dislikes him because his wife is his high school sweetheart. Rebecca isn't very happy about it and is unsure about what will happen between John and Gwen. She's also surprised to find out that John smokes, as he usually doesn't. The conversation doesn't go very well. Dunn is broke at the bank. He can't get another loan. Mr. Jim advises him that preparing for bankruptcy is the most realistic and best option. Dunn is devastated as he has dedicated his entire life to his work. While beautiful music plays in the background, John drives to a place where he likely spent good times during high school. He swings on a tire and it seems to relax him. I wish I could describe this beautiful movie to you even better. I'm sorry, John. Dunn drives to the store. While Ron is watching TV with his mother, Sally, and his daughters, his wife arrives, worried about their children because she didn't know where they were. The daughters tell her that their dad brought them here, which is why they aren't at school. Ron steps outside with Stacy to talk. From their conversation, we learn that Ron was actually the one who brought up the idea of divorce. Now he regrets it, but it's too late. Later, Ron and John are in the waiting room. Ron blames his brother for thinking he's above them all and for never keeping in touch. John tries to explain that he moved to New York because there was nothing for him here. They go in to see the doctor to get a better explanation of what they plan to do for Sally. Ron interrupts with his silly story about how he trained karate as a kid and starts asking the doctor unnecessary questions. At one point, John has had enough and pulls his brother outside. Later, John goes to Gwen and Jason's place for dinner. Jason opens the door for him.
What are you doing here?
Jason is just joking around. After John walks in, he tosses away the flowers that were meant for Gwen. John meets Jason's daughter, Quinn, and asks Jason if the baby is okay since she's crying. Jason tells him that crying is good for a baby's lungs. John doesn't quite agree, so he soothes the baby himself.
Hey.
She is John's old love, and she looks stunning. John even says so. After just a few words, Gwen gets emotional and lashes out. But soon, both of them admit how much they've missed each other.
You should have called me.
Soon, Jason arrives with beers. It's time for dinner, but before that, he once again manages to upset the baby. While they eat, Gwen learns about John's girlfriend from Jason. She also finds out that John is expecting a child but isn't married. Jason, on the other hand, proposed to Gwen the moment he saw the pregnancy test in the trash. How romantic. Gwen doesn't seem too happy when John describes his girlfriend as beautiful and mentions that she designs clothes for pets. John also casually adds that her parents are wealthy and even bought her a house for her birthday. Jason starts getting annoying, so Gwen sends him to do the dishes. Now, she and John are alone. Gwen loved John in high school, and he is clearly the love of her life. But since they broke up, she settled for whoever could give her a family, and that just happened to be the infamous Jason. Believe me, that's how most love stories go. On his way home, John calls Rebecca and tells her about the dinner he had at Jason and Gwen's place.
She kissed me.
John is brutally honest, even telling his pregnant wife how amazing Gwen looks. God help him. He parks in front of a store and goes in to buy a beer. While still on the phone with Rebecca, he unexpectedly runs into his father, who now works there. John quickly ends the call with Rebecca and steps outside to have a beer and talk with his dad. He offers to have Rebecca help him out financially, but his father refuses. Then, his dad apologizes for not spending more time with the family while they were growing up. He tells John that it's terrifying to realize so late in life what he should have done all along. In the next scene, we see Rebecca, who has arrived from New York, pregnant, to see John. She wakes him up and meets his brother, Ron, in a pink bathrobe. Rebecca tells John that she took a taxi all the way from New York, which is quite a long way. She asks about balloon drawings, and John explains that's how he envisions the wallpaper for the nursery. After some more conversation, Rebecca falls asleep. We then see Dawn and a worried Sally. That night, Ron goes to visit his daughters. They let him in through the window, and he goes to sleep with them. The next morning, Rebecca wakes up with stomach pains. It's likely time for her new baby to enter the world. Stacy goes to wake up her daughters for school but is once again shocked and annoyed when she sees Ron. While watching the other children through the window, Ron is approached by a doctor who reveals that he's going to have twins. Rebecca already knew they were having twins. That day, they found out about his mom, and she's also unsure whether John even wants children. She says it's obvious that he's unhappy with his work, his life, and maybe even with her. John opens up and admits that he's worried about being a failure. Rebecca explains that she didn't take an 8-hour taxi ride just to disappoint him. She really needs him. Afterward, Rebecca tells him that she doesn't want to give birth to their children in this hospital and wants her own doctor instead. Stacy called the police, and Ron is no longer allowed to step foot in that house under any circumstances. A large crowd has gathered outside, and among them is the well-dressed priest. He tells Ron that his daughters called him and asks what he was doing in the house. Ron replies that he was feeling lonely. The priest pulls Ron away from the police and invites him for coffee. Ron also reminds the priest not to bother him with all that nonsense about Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, John goes to the hospital, where he sees his mother up and walking. She's worried because they'll have to shave her head. John comforts her and tells her that he's going to have twins. His mother hugs him tightly. Despite her illness, Sally tries to keep her spirit and sense of humor alive.
Mrs. Holler, you ready for your new do?
This guy is seriously unbelievable. He comes to shave Sally's head but does nothing to make her feel better. Right before the shaving begins, John steps in and says he'll do it himself. Sally feels a bit safer and is grateful to her son. After the haircut, Sally asks for lipstick. She mentions that tonight, her last meal will be yogurt and a boiled egg. John feels sorry for her and, on a whim, sneaks his mother out of the hospital in a wheelchair. By accident, they hide in a room where a woman is giving birth. Jason spots them and starts chasing after them. They manage to escape the hospital, and Jason doesn't catch up to them. John and Sally go out for a nice meal and have a great time together. At one point, John asks her what she meant when she said she regretted marrying his father. On the day she married him, her mother told her, "Don't waste your life on the bad. Live for the good." But in the end, Dawn and Sally shared 38 good years together. Soon, Dawn and Ron arrive. Ron jokes that his mom has a great haircut, and Dawn tells her she looks wonderful. They enjoy the rest of the evening, savoring their delicious meal. Another day has passed. The next day, Sally tells Rebecca that she is really good for John and that she loves her. After thanking everyone for being there, Dunn starts crying. Sally hugs him and tells him to take care of Ron. Then she hugs Ron and tells him to take care of their father. When it's John's turn, she simply says to look after both of them. Jason arrives, and it's time to take Sally in for surgery. She breaks down in tears, saying she doesn't want to go. As everyone tries to comfort her, her husband suddenly starts singing a song by Indigo Girls. As they will Sally away, everyone joins in, singing together. The doctors take Sally into surgery, and the procedure begins. As Sally undergoes the operation, everyone in the waiting room is tense and worried. Ron steps outside for some air, and John immediately follows him. Inside, Dunn approaches Rebecca and thanks her for being there. Outside, John tells Ron that their dad wants him back at work, not as an employee, but as a partner to run the company together. Ron is a bit surprised but points out that there's no money to pay him since the business is struggling. John tells him to move in with their dad. That's enough until the company gets back on its feet. Ron says he'll think about it. When John goes back inside, he tells their father that Ron wants to return to work and that he's willing to do it for free.
Take care of both of them.
After some time, the doctor comes out and announces that the surgery was successful and that Sally will be moved to intensive care. Soon, they all go to see her. Dunn tells his sons they should go home and rest. He'll stay with Sally. While in the elevator, Ron says he's decided to start working with Dawn again. Ron then goes to pick up his daughters. He thanks Stacy and leaves with them. They play together, joined by John and Rebecca. Meanwhile, Sally wakes up and Dunn, overjoyed, tells her that the tumor is gone.
I don't know.
I need everyone here.
The doctors rush into the room and tell Dunn to step outside. He's completely shaken. How could this happen when the surgery was successful? Dunn stands there in disbelief, unable to process what's going on. After some time, he calls Ron and delivers the devastating news. Sally has passed away. Ron, shocked and heartbroken, goes to tell John. The two brothers head to the hospital, where Dr. Fong explains what happened. Dunn is in tears, standing up and leaving when he hears the doorbell. It's Jason. Sally had asked him to deliver a letter to her husband in case the surgery didn't go well. In the letter, she writes that he gave her a wonderful life and that she loves him. Donald completely breaks down, sobbing. Then the doorbell rings again. It's Jason, once more. He explains that Sally asked him to wait a few minutes before delivering a second letter. This one reads, "Stop crying. You need to start planning the funeral. And don't forget, I love orchids." That was Sally's style. Dunn thanks Jason and sits on the steps, caught between laughter and tears. Dunn insists on getting the most expensive casket available. Ron hesitates, worried about the cost, but a tall man with glasses informs them that all expenses have already been covered. When they ask who paid for everything, he simply says it was an anonymous donor. The sons leave, while their father chooses to stay in the church a little longer. Outside, John runs into Rebecca and soon learns that she was the one who covered the funeral costs.
Marry me.
What?
For better or worse. And this is the perfect moment. As they sit in the car, Rebecca asks John to take her somewhere Sally loved. He takes her to the famous spot where he once fell into the water. Since they don't have rings, Ron hands them a marker, and they draw rings on each other's fingers. In that simple but meaningful moment, they become husband and wife.
Kiss your bride.
After their kiss, John and Rebecca take a moment to enjoy the quiet together. Then comes the funeral. As John delivers a heartfelt speech about his mother, Rebecca suddenly goes into labor. She tries to act like she's fine, but it quickly becomes clear that she isn't. Everyone rushes to help. John takes a moment to run back and kiss the casket before they hurry to the car. But the car won't start. Ron never got around to fixing it. So they switch to another, much better vehicle, one specifically designed to transport pregnant women to the hospital. They rush to the hospital and park properly. The old man laughs, and John laughs along with him. When they enter, they realize they've gone to the wrong building. They need to walk down the hall and turn right. John takes Rebecca to the delivery room, while Dunn and Ron share a heartfelt hug, supporting each other in this moment of change.
Mrs. Holler?
Mrs. Hollers is heading to give birth. And that's a wrap on this film. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel so we can hit 1,000 subscribers, and we'll catch up in the next video.